Oh, I'm live. Oh, God damn it. That's lovely. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Cult of Color. This is Color Grading 101, week 4. I think we're on our 6th week, though, because of having to take time off. Dog, would you fuck off, please? Fuck off. I'm busy. This week, we're going to be talking about primary corrections in Resolve. So now, like, we've gone through all the theory. We've gone through some of the software and hardware and conceptual type stuff. Now we're going to get down to actual meat and potatoes. I think this is what you guys signed up for. So here we go. Let's take a look, see who's in the chat. We got Car Guy for Life. What's up? We got Lambo Drive Zambo. What's up? Flyby James. What's up? Welcome. Thanks for coming in. I'm sure more people will be trickling in as I dropped the link a little bit too late for folks on other Discords. So that's okay as well. Yes. Woo. Bartman, what's up, dog? What's up, Bartman? So, Bartman, I hear you gave Maddie something, or Lambo something that caused him to go into a rescue situation or something. I don't know. Let us know. So yes, we got some amazing clips submitted by Falcon Rad and Off Axis. Hopefully we'll get to see them this evening, and they'll get to see the fruits of their labor. I'm going to do the primary corrections on them, but since they were mostly in auto mode, there's not a whole lot of primary corrections to do, so I'm going to go through the primary connections, but we're also going to go through the remainder of the grade on both of those just to keep it interesting. Hey, Bartman! Yay! But it was all your fault. Oh, that's funny. Oh, and he claims it too. I love it. Yeah, I guess he had a crash or something, or had to rescue his quad. I don't know. We'll have to wait for the videos on that. So, let's get started here. People are still rolling in, which is totally cool. Be sure to smash that like button or whatever. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. There's a Patreon down in the doobly-doo in case you want to, I don't know, toss a coin to your local colorist. Nothing's behind a paywall, so it's entirely up to you. And there's also a Discord link down in the description if you wanted to get some videos submitted in. If you want to just take a look, want us to take a look at your video, give you a grade critique. Oh, that reminds me, I do have a grade critique to do tonight. Songbird FPV submitted a video for grade critique, so we will take a look at that as well before we get into the nitty gritty with Falcon Rad and Off Axis videos. And yes, on to the grading. Stop talking, Joe. All right. Let me pull up that that thingy here. Where'd it go? So where'd it go? Songbird FPV. All right. Let's have a see look at this guy. So Songbird FPV wanting us to critique his grade. Let me get silly ass music turned off here. There we go. Music's a bit quiet, but that's fine. I'm liking what I'm seeing. Obviously, he doesn't have a whole lot of natural color to work with because it's snowy and overcast. White balance is spot on. It looks like he pulled the detail out of the clouds. I can tell because YouTube hates that, and YouTube really struggles. I can see blockiness, and that's not his fault. That's YouTube's fault. But I don't see any noise, so that's good. Good detail. Nothing is blown out, nothing's crushed. It's very well balanced. Oh, that's a good shot. Look at the detail in the trees. That looks like a place I would not want to lose a quad. The field of view seems a little bit narrow, almost like it's been punched in somehow. I might have the stabilization turned up a little bit too high for the flying style. Hey, Don, what's up, dog? Thanks for coming in. Ah, Falcon Rat is here. Welcome. Glad you guys can make it. We're just taking a look at Songbird FPV's critique my grade submission. Oh, you can see the snow. That's really awesome. Caught the blue out of the sky. Got really great detail in the sky. Because I bet normally, like, as you're standing there on the ground, you wouldn't be able to see those colors in the sky, and it would just be kind of gray. So, really good job, Songbird, on pulling those details out of the sky there. It looks cold. I don't like the cold. That's why I haven't really been flying. I mean, I think it's like now it's 40 degrees, which just seems like shorts and t-shirts weather outside. But it was like negative a million degrees for like a couple of weeks or something like that. It just really turned me off to going outside and flying. That, and it's been rainy or snowy for like months, so I haven't had a real good, dry, safe day to put a quad up in the air. I don't necessarily want to deal with wondering if conformal coating is going to do its job this time around. Very cool. Overall, Songbird, excellent job. Great work. Really have no critiques or complaints. Everything was on par. YouTube kind of ate it. So, I mean, we could get, like, if I wanted to nitpick, we talk about your delivery method, but that's neither here nor there. The grade itself is good. It conveys what it was you were trying to convey, and I thought you did a good job. So keep going, keep doing it. It was great work, man. Not sure if you're aware, but you're son of a bitch. You're right, car guy. We're gonna do that one again. Holy shit, that is painful. I cannot believe I did that. Jesus Christ. All right, let's try that again, shall we? So I want everyone else to be able to see this too. That's just so bad. Thanks, dude. Sorry, I'm new here apparently. God, I always forget about that stupid camera. So I'm like, I'm just sharing my screen. It's fine. Alright, let's try this again, shall we? Stupid background music off. He's mesmerized watching me watch. It's like a two girls, one cup reaction video. No, I mean, look at the detail he's pulling out of the... I mean, there's a lot of contrast to be had in the trees, right? So, he's got... I'm gonna do a murder on this dog. He's got really great contrast inside the trees. You get to see the snow, but you can also see the kind of the dark shadows that the snow-covered branches cast. So, you know, really well done there. YouTube obviously eating this up like bad. So, the encoding problems I see are not his fault. Like 99% sure it's not his fault. So. Yeah, watermarking the stream. That's exactly what I was doing with my face. Yeah, it looks like it's a little bit too punched in for what's needed for this particular flying style. I'm not sure if it was stabilized in gyro flow or real steady. Sorry, my dog is super rambunctious this evening. Look at that trail. Isn't that pretty? He pulled what's left of the fall colors out of the tree, which I thought was really good as well. It looks a little punched in, and we'll talk about that when I go over off-axis and Falcon Rat's footage. You can see where he is. He's parked in his car because it's obviously way too damn cold to be standing out there. I just love how you can see the snow, like coming down in front of the GoPro. It's not heavy, and it's not all the time. Jesus fucking Christ, dog, get! My dog really wants to play with me right now because he knows I'm doing something else. Yeah, definitely, Car Guy. It is most certainly cool footage. Really well done, Songbird. I know I said it already when only I was watching, but now everybody else got to see too. So, yeah, he'll probably catch the replay. He might jump in later, but which is totally cool. That's why we have archives, right? God damn it, dog! I'm gonna put you in the oven, dude. Jesus. Anyway, so let's take a look at what we got here. So I'm going to open these up in Gyroflow. Now, if the astute among you might notice, I've already stabilized both off-axis and Falcon Rat's footage. That's largely so you guys didn't have to sit through it. And I have a piece of my footage here, it's a little bit more applicable to primary corrections because it looks like ass out of the camera, and that's kind of by design. But I'm going to open these guys up in Gyroflow as soon as I find it. You can see what settings I would use and what settings I actually did use. Why did I open that? Go away. This guy right here. So I believe this is off axis, or is this is Falcon Rat? Yep. Okay. So Falcon Rat, I don't know if you're using Real Steady or if you're using Gyroflow. First off, your footage, I mean, Jesus, dude. It's epic as hell. The one thing, and I don't know if oh, I was like, what dog are you talking about? Totally forgot about my dog already. I don't know if the Hero 11 Mini has a GPS or not. If it does, I would recommend turning it on, and I can show you why later on. There's a lot of really cool data that you can pull out of that as well. Cool, use Gyroflow, awesome. So for your videos, simply because you don't have a whole lot of shake to begin with, and all we want to do is like we want to just take the slight little bumps and vibrations out of the video, but outside of that, you know, and then anytime you engage in a turn or some kind of movement, we want to ramp that motion a little bit. We don't want to necessarily stabilize it, like we don't want to real steady smooth it. We want to still be able to see you flying the quad, but you're already such a smooth pilot that we don't need to do a whole lot to it. So I've only elected for a 50 millisecond stabilization window, and I've maintained my 1 second zooming speed, which barely zooms at all. If we look at how the crop in is done, so you can see with the 8x3 sensor, 5312 by 4648, we got a lot of vertical lines of resolution. This is kind of the magic of the Hero 11 and the 12, that 8x7 sensor. We get a lot of vertical resolution, which gives us a lot more vertical lines, vertical resolution to play with when we start stretching things out. So if you see, like, so let me do it. Pull that out a little bit. You can see how, you know, obviously this image was square to begin with, right? And now we've stretched the pixels out in the corners quite a bit. Oh my god. Dog. Fuck off. Tomato. Fuck off. Would you get your stinky ass chicken and get out of here? Go. Go. I'm going to take you home to your real parents. Fucker. Um, so the way gyroflow works and the way real steady works is it stretches the pixel aspect ratio, according to an equation to get the distortion correction happening. So when it, normally I think if I had time, I didn't have time to do this. I would, when we stretch these corners, they get blurry. So if I reset this to 1 and I punch back in, we can take a quick look at the corners. Let me get to where there's some actual detail here. You see how the corners are a little bit blurrier than in the middle, right? We're barely changing the pixels in the middle of the frame, but in the corners it gets pretty rough, and that's because the pixels become diamond shaped in the corners. And so, hey Flexo, what's up, dude? You're never too late. Never too late. So what ends up happening is if I just export this in 4K, then I'm going to be just capturing the blurry corners as is, right? It looks blurry on here because my view window is this size, this many pixels. What we can do, and what I like to do, what I didn't do this time to save some time, is I usually come over here and I'll do 8K. And if I want to get really sick, really stupid, I'll do 8K with 444 chroma subsampling. Now I've got another tutorial here on the YouTubes. If you want to dive more into gyroflow and the 8K process, it is very system intensive and it's not fast, but the quality you get is worth it. You get sharp corners. You're basically going to throw more pixels on top of those big stretched out diamond pixels to make sure you get the maximum detail and maximum color information. So yeah, 50 millisecond smoothness window, and I would keep my zooming speed at 1 second. Everything else basically the same. In this case, I exported 4K at 300 megabit per second. And I just did the entire video, although you have an opportunity here to kind of go up until the fact where your gyro data starts to move, and you can do some pre-editing here. And the footage ends right there. Did you lose your quad up there? I didn't actually look at the end of that one. So, not mine. What are you talking about, Lambo? Tell me your secrets. Tell me your secrets. I'm guessing what this is one clip out of several in a library, because the GoPro can only see the Hero 12 does 12 gig chapters, so this is about an 11 gig file. So you probably just didn't send me the second file, which is fine. We don't need it. But you should look into the labs firmware and expand that 64 gig chapters to make things easier on yourself, because it's really hard to get. It's really difficult to get the gyro data to line up between the two clips. You can use gyroflow to join them. You can also use FFmpeg to join them, but sometimes there'll be a little bit of a mismatch and you'll just get a weird jerk as the clips cut. So for the sake of gyro data or GPS data, if you're going to use it, definitely larger chapter sizes is more better. But this footage is absolutely fantastic, and we're going to have a nice go at it. I'm going to do the primaries, and then I'm actually going to go through and follow through with the grade, just so I don't leave everybody with some, colorless blue balls wanting to know what I would do with the final footage. Now I've already exported this one, so we'll flip over to off-axis his submission. And he gave me, it's from a Hero 10 Black, and he gave me 5.3K 16:9. For him, I'd recommend switching over to 4:3, just to give himself some more vertical resolution. Oh, okay. Gotcha. That makes more sense now. I only saw one, but it's okay. Not a big deal. So here is Marcel's submission. and he's shot at 60 frames per second as opposed to 30. His bit rate's a bit lower, so that means each one of his frames has less data dedicated to its information, and it's 8-bit color. Can we do stuff with this? Absolutely. Am I going to go through it? Absolutely. I'm not going to be like, oh, it's 8-bit. I'm too good for 8-bit. Fuck you guys. In fact, because it's 60 frames per second instead of 30, we can actually convert this to 24 and add some motion blur after the fact to kind of pretty it up a little bit. That being said, it's not necessary. He's not moving particularly fast, so we don't need a ton of motion blur, and the frame rate's kind of inconsequential at this point. But yeah, we're gonna go over that. Looks like he's got auto white balance on. You see it shifting all the time. And for you two guys specifically, Falcon Red, I want to talk about ultraviolet light, because that's going to affect you more than most people, since you guys love going up into the damn stratosphere with your drones. Yeah, we got some auto white balance shifts here and there, so we got to be a little bit careful about how, when we get into the secondary grades, how we would address those, because his white balance does shift as he goes over the snow. This is kind of one of the downsides to being so close to the ground with so much contrast, is when something dark in the shade gets, the majority of the frame, it tends to shift the white balance towards blue, kind of cools it down, which makes the outer highlights up here warmer. And then as we crest this top here, we shift back to this white balance, and then it makes the shadows cooler. Damn work keeps making you do stuff. Nah, I feel it, brah. They just keep making me do stuff too. I'm kind of over it. So yes, he definitely likes getting close to stuff. So this is one of those areas where it's a little problematic from an exposure standpoint, given that it's a Hero 10, because it's exposing properly for this darkened in the shadow rock wall, which is great, but then the highlights are blowing out, and then that becomes a little bit more apparent as we crest the top just for a moment, and everything's kind of blown out. There we go, right there, right? So a couple of things you can do in labs from where you can slow that transition down. It's default 1 second. You can slow it down to, for me, I have my Hero 12 and my 11 set to 10 seconds. So it takes 10 seconds to make that exposure change. It gives it a little bit more consistent, a little bit more of a consistent look, and doesn't actually look like the exposure is changing. So if I go through a shaded place real quick, I don't necessarily want my entire scene to change. So yeah, I've already stabilized those. Let's go into Resolve. And we will look at Falcon Rad's first, because I see him here. He's a pupper. So I turned my display scaling up to 200% this time. I'm still streaming in 4K. I still have a 4K desktop. No idea how you guys can work like this. This is insane. It's so cramped. I don't even know, but at least you guys can see what the hell I'm doing now. Now having to squint. So bring his stab in here. Come on, there we go. Yeah, we'll change the frame rate. And just to be sure, go through, shit, don't even know where I am. Go through my project settings, make sure everything's set up appropriately. 4K, don't care about image scaling. Color management, we're using managed color, SDR processing mode, and SDR delivery. I'm not using my monitor, so I don't have to worry about that. I think that's it. So we're good to go. Are we back yet? Are we fucking back yet? Holy shit, everything just froze up. Sorry about that, guys. Should be good to go now. As I was saying, I'm going to take the edit to just before he takes off, give or take. And we'll just take it all the way to the end. Drop that shit down there. No, it was me, guys. I done busted it. It's been a weird thing. It's been happening lately. Mostly when I'm using like Teams or something. It just locks up for a few seconds, but it's the whole machine, so I don't know what the hell's going on with it. Probably my SSD's failing or something. I don't know. Yeah, so. Okay, well that explains then why I didn't have. So both Falcon Red and Marcel don't. They don't record audio with their flights, and that's fine. I do as a preference just in case something interesting happens, like talking and whatever. So good. I'm glad. Yeah. Sometimes I catch myself doing something funny, so I keep the audio on. Yeah. So here's what I wanted to talk about with you guys. This applies to both of you. So let me scooch forward just a little bit. Okay, see out here? Do you see how it's blue? So because of the altitude that you guys are at, as you get closer to the edge of the atmosphere, you get more and more ultraviolet light that filters through. And what ends up happening is it refracts through the atmosphere and its frequency is lowered into the visible spectrum. So you get a blue shift the higher you go. If anybody's ever been to the Grand Canyon and tried to take a picture, you definitely know what's up there, right? It is a bit of a struggle. You can use a UV filter on your camera. You can take it out in post. Most of the time, it's kind of an expected aesthetic. Thought you had audio on. Maybe, dude. I don't know. I just work here. It's probably me. It's gone so smooth so far, hasn't it? One, I had my face in front of videos trying to play for people. Two, my shit locked up. Three, probably didn't export audio because sometimes I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah. So that's one of those things that it's more of an issue for photographers when they're trying to do landscapes because it's just sort of like, obviously it's a blue shift. But it is also part of the aesthetic of being a high altitude, especially in video. It's not necessarily a bad thing. For me, I probably wouldn't take it out. For you, you might not want it in there, and you might choose to try to correct that. And that would come in secondary corrections, because if you try to correct that now in the primaries, you'd screw the rest of your video, your shot there. So let's talk primary correction. So we have auto white balance, which is fine. One of the things that we've got here, and I'm going to teach you guys a little bit about pulling a white balance off of clouds, which is pretty helpful if you don't have a color calibration chart handy. You can use clouds, but there's certain situations that you have to be in order to properly use the clouds. The cloud shouldn't be super far away because the atmosphere will cause a color shift. You want the cloud to be in front of you and the sun to be as perfectly behind you as possible. And you want to pick your white balance off of the side of the cloud and not off the bottom or towards the top, because you don't want blue reflections from the sky and you don't want red reflections from the ground. You want lateral reflections. So as much of a vertical wall of a cloud that you can get to with the sun behind you that's being lit by the sun. And also you don't want it to be completely blown out. That's not helpful. So let's check the white balance here. That's pretty good. So I will pull my white balance right up there. And we had a small adjustment. We got warmed up a little bit, got greened down a little bit, and then actually took a little bit of the blue out of the ultraviolet casting there. So outside of this, I might darken up the shadow. So we're going to add some contrast. Probably do the 3 slider correction just as a starting point. So I'll take my pivot all the way up. I'll take my shadows all the way up, and I'll contrast to taste. So we want to, in this case, the brightest part of our scene is going to be the waterfall because the sun is right behind us. We don't want to darken it too much where we can see the waterfall perfectly, because obviously that makes our trees like way too dark. So we want to get to right when we're starting to get some detail in there. And then we're going to take the saturation down just a little bit. Now let me do this again, but this time we're going to split it off into separate nodes. We're going to do it right. Okay, so we'll reset this node's grade here. I'm going to scooch back to that reference frame I used to pull white balance. That works. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and label this WB for white balance, not Warner Brothers. And we'll pull our white balance before. So right there. Yep, there's that same adjustment that I made before. Then I'm going to create a new node. And here we're going to do our exposure. So in this case, it's going to be contrast. If we wanted to keep more of a natural look, we wouldn't necessarily do, I mean, we can start with the 3 slider correction, and then to bring it back more towards the natural look, we'll pull the pivot down and then pull the contrast down and so forth, and then we pull the shadows down. So these 3 things are primarily what you're going to be kind of messing with. See, I don't want the highlights in the water blown out, but I also don't want to crush the shadows in the trees. Like I said, being auto mode, almost all of, put a little smidgen, pull up my, there we go. Here's my parade all messed up. Thank you. Okay. Want a little smidgen of detail in the waterfall, and just a tiny bit of contrast probably get us there. So in this case, since we're doing SDR, all the way up here is peaked out, and all the way down here is crushed, right? Visually, it's going to start looking like it's peaked out long before it gets up to the actual mathematical peak out. So we want to be aware of that. And we can see the waterfall right there is, in fact, the brightest thing that's happening in the scene. And we can probably pull down on our gain a little bit so we get that detail. Now let's scrub around and see what that looks like for the rest of it. A little dark on the trees, but it's not terrible just yet. Like I said, we're just doing the primary corrections, and the key thing, the key concepts, if you really wanted to understand the biggest difference between primary and secondary corrections, primary corrections are what you're doing to the entire image. You're not splitting it out. You're not doing corrections to your sky and your ground separately. You're not doing specific color ranges or luminance ranges. It's what you're doing to the whole scene. And this will make more sense when I show you my piece of footage that you have to do primaries on before you can do anything creative. Like I said, with these 2 clips that were submitted, they're pretty much all on auto, so the white balance is pretty much going to be spot on. The exposure and contrast are going to be, you know, nominal. No like actual corrections need to happen there. So, you know, they look beautiful out of the box for the most part. When you start getting into full manual settings, sometimes you might be a little bit overexposed or a little bit underexposed for your scene, and you'll want to fix that exposure before you start taking creative, start making creative choices with your grade. So we will label this guy exposure, and then we will forward here. We'll do saturation. Saturazione. And we will just take a look at, we're looking for color contrast here. You can see blue is already pretty up there. So what we might do is, I don't necessarily want to pull this up. Again, it's like it's coming right out of the camera, so saturation is going to be kind of an all right thing. We don't need to really screw with it too much. If we go further into it, the added contrast that we had over here, that 1.2, adding contrast adds color contrast, so it adds saturation inherently. There's a way of getting around that, but that's just something to keep in mind. If you crank the contrast, the colors get really saturated really fast. See, you can see it's quite green, right? So we might choose to see this like darkness right here on the exposure. We're going to come down here to lift, pull that up just a touch to make sure that we can see some kind of detail in those shadows. Really want to take advantage of the GoPro's dynamic range. Make sure we're getting the most of it. So this is great. We can still see the detail in the water as it's coming down the waterfall, and it is like exposed for this whiteness here, but we still got great clarity in the sky. We can still see in the shadows. Nothing's too saturated. It's nice. The one thing, like Falcon Red gave me like really great footage, 8x7, 10-bit, and it was 150 megabit. I don't know if you're using Labs firmware or not, but I thought the max on the 11 was 120 out of the box. You can set it higher with Labs firmware. Maybe you can let me know in the chat, but it's great footage. As you can see, like we've maintained the field of view because our stabilization window is so slow, and that gives us it gives us more to look at, right? But also gives us a lot more detail in the center. Yeah, Labs firmware. Yeah, I could tell. I love it. I really feel like GoPro makes the Labs firmware really inconvenient to use, because like you try to use the app and it's like you have a firmware update and you update your firmware, you're no longer on Labs firmware anymore. Yeah, so like not a whole lot going on for primary corrections here. Again, because a lot of it was auto. From here, let me get these out of the way. So we did our primaries, okay? Now we're going to move on to secondaries. And for me, I like to separate my sky and my ground. And if there's like a large body of water like ocean, 500K, okay. Lock shutter variable ISO. Sometimes auto shutter 1 or 200. Okay. Oh wow, you went full custom on it. You turned the noise reduction off too. That's a brave move, Cotton. The noise reduction can be a lifesaver. But for I think your purposes, being that you're almost always in a fully outdoor lit situation, you're not going to have to really struggle with the noise too much, and it does maintain the details in your shadows, which is nice. Custom log profile too. That could definitely be a lot more aggressive. Maybe like 1000. And then set your white balance. Instead of setting it to a static, you want to set it native. If you set it to native, then your sensor has an even response to the entire color palette. If you set it static, basically you're taking that horizontal line of response and you're tilting it, right? We talked about this a couple weeks ago when I was talking about color theory. You tilt that line, so yes, you've corrected your white balance, but then you've reduced the headroom you have for certain colors. So if you're cooling off your scene, if it's warm and you cool it off, then you lose the amount of data that you can have for blue. And you do expand the amount of data you have for red, but you don't have an even sensor response anymore because you've kind of locked it in. You've tossed away data before it's even written to the card. And if you guys know anything about me at this point, you know I hate throwing data away. So it's always capture the maximum, process the maximum, deliver the actual product. So you don't throw anything away until you actually deliver the video. So I would give native white balance a try. I would probably crank up that log a bit. Maybe 500 to 1000 is my guess. But it's not, I mean, this is great. So I certainly cannot complain. And then again, the noise reduction, I think for most people, I wouldn't recommend turning it off. Yeah, native is best. it looks like ass coming off the camera, but you do get an even sensor response, which means you have all of your color grading tools will act the same on each of the colors. You don't all of a sudden have blue just disappear or just get crushed all of a sudden for no good reason. And then also, there's another one, wide, the wide sensor gamut. So basically, the sensor no longer writes Rec 709 color space. It's unspaced, and it basically means whatever the sensor can see is what gets written to the file. And that really is handy when you're dealing with something that's really, really colorful in real life. So your reds and your blues and your greens will saturate to a much higher color volume than you would get from normal Rec 709. The file still is tagged with Rec 709, but the values, those float values for the 10-bit, they're beyond Rec 709. So that unspaced color, it can be it can be a little bit weird if you know, at first, because things are going to respond a little bit differently, but you get a lot more information, especially in the high saturation areas. I mean, you don't want it to be like, I don't think anybody saw it. I might have uploaded it to YouTube Shorts. I can't remember. I did this joke color grading meme for TikTok where, you know, those people are like power of color grading. And they show like their log footage and then like it wipes across to their final grade or whatever. And all I was doing is taking my footage and I was just flattening the shit out of it up front, like it was like log 6,000 or something, right? And then it would cut across to this beautiful grade. I like making fun of those people. It's silly, but because I know most of them are just throwing LUTs on their shit. Ask me how I feel about LUTs, guys. Yeah, the Instagram influencers are insufferable as far as colorists are concerned. Especially the guy. There's guys out there that are like, I'm a videographer, but then they've got like they got DaVinci panel on their desk and like nothing else. I'm like, they just bought that just to, I don't know. There's no point in having the panels unless you're like being a colorist is your job. It's a nice thing to have, but for the price, you know, as a hobby, it's hey, what's up, Rain Squad? As a hobby, it's not economical. I mean, even for me, I'm professional. I don't have them because I just don't need them. I'm fine. I've got my fancy. I use an Apple trackpad with my Windows machine. I love it. So yeah, we're moving on to secondaries. Just gonna blast through this because we're talking about secondaries next week. But I want Falcon Rad and OffX to see what I would actually do with their footage. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna separate my. Everything looks weird, all blown up and shit. Separate the sky and the ground. So I'm just using the Magic Mask, which is a DaVinci. It's a Resolve Studio only feature. And there we go. And then I want to tell it I don't want any of the sky. I have a feeling this is not going to go as smoothly as I would generally like because of that waterfall, but we'll see. Sometimes the AI is really smart. Sometimes it's really stupid. And I'm just going to start tracking. This is such a long one take too, going through and fixing it. See right here, it's already broken. It's already fallen apart with those mountains in the background, which is not that big of a deal because they're white, but it can get problematic pretty quick. And you know, it's like I could do it a different way. I could just try to select all the colors in the sky and hope that they're not on the ground somewhere. But I know that there's a white waterfall, and that's going to end up causing me problems. So. Yeah, there we go. It fell apart over there. It's just easier to track it, I think, unless it turns into a major pain in the dick. Like if I'm doing something where I'm flying underneath a lot of trees, sometimes the Magic Mask is really good about picking out the ninja branches and the leaves and everything and making sure those stay a part of the ground and not part of the sky. Other times it can completely fall apart, and the time it takes to actually correct the mask is not worth it. So I'll switch to a different. I'll use like 3D color selector to try to select the sky. It's actually turning out pretty good. It's a little sluggish because I'm streaming right now. So it's not going as fast as it could be. We don't have to do the whole video. We can just take what we got there. And we don't have to use the more refined, since we're not dealing with any trees up close. So, shit. Did it on the wrong node. Fail! So for my secondaries, I'm going to create a new node. And I'm going to call this one track. And I'm going to do it right this time. So let's... Usually, like, when I'm tracking, I don't want to track forward from where I take off from. There's something about the geometry, about the way the zoom in works with the gyro flow. It falls apart, so I go just a little bit after liftoff, and then it'll track backwards when it's time to actually get to that point. Just draw vague lines here and there. Okay, and we'll track for a few seconds. I'm really glad you're able to make the stream. It's a stream, Rain Squad. Yeah, we're just gonna have to ignore that little spot over there. For the sake of tonight, I'm not gonna fix any of those, and I'm not gonna use the higher quality mask because we don't really need to. I want it to get at least close up to something so we can illustrate that a bit. So Falcon Rat asks, so you're making a tracking mask to separate the ground and sky for the purpose of secondary grading of each one individually. Is that right? The answer to that question is yes. We've done our primary corrections, right? Because most of it was already correct out of the box, there wasn't a whole lot for us to do. When we start splitting things apart is when we start dealing with secondary corrections. So I'm still in the color correction phase and I haven't done anything stylish yet. But because the luminance and shadow values between the sky and the ground are so wildly different, if I try to correct for the ground so the ground is perfect, the sky will not be. If I try to correct for the sky so the sky is perfect, the ground won't be. So I need to split them apart. So this is technically where we get to secondary grades. All right, or secondary corrections rather. So we got enough there. Now I take my track. We actually want to kind of mush all this together. I'm not used to not having this kind of room on my node chart here, so forgive me. And I will create another node. I'm not doing any corrections to this track node here. It's just going to stay where it is. And I'm going to take this, I'm going to rename it to ground. And what I'm going to do is going to pull that out of the way, and I'm going to connect to the output from our primary correction nodes to ground. And I'm just going to take the mask and put that on ground. Just like that. And then from there, oh my God, there's no room. Keep that stuff separate. Okay. So from there, I'm going to create a layer node. So layer node, it's just like layers in like Premiere or After Effects, except that what you need to imagine is that you're a little guy down here looking up. So the bottommost thing is on top. Okay, so I'm going to label this my sky. I want my sky to be on top. And I need to take the mask from the tracking node, pipe it in here, and then I need to go in here and invert my mask so it's only the sky. So I only have to track once. Right after this doobie. Hey, Off Axis. Good to see you, bud. So now that I've got my sky and my ground separated, I actually want to denoise and filter this mask. You can see it gets a little bit soft on the edges and bleeds into, like if you get wound up, if you use a magic mask and you get wound up on the red, you're going to be here all day perceptively, you're not going to be able to see any of that bleed. It's going to look quite nice. Stream submissions. Somebody just popped in here. Here's some footage. Flattened straight out of the GoPro 11. Oh, look at that. Oh my God, SharePoint. SharePoint? You SharePoint? You Sorry, dude. I use SharePoint at work, but not for my personal shit. I gotta give you shit. Sorry, dude. So, I want to make sure I turn this off. So obviously, I haven't tracked the entire video because that would take more minutes than I care to use. But now we can split these up a little bit. So scooch forward, and then I can do my slider correction till I get this where I want it. Right about there, because we can see in the shadows. You know, I'm gonna have to try turning that noise reduction off. I've been a little timid on trying that, Falcon, but I like what I'm seeing here. There's a lot more detail in the shadows than I was expecting. I'm gonna have to give that one a whirl, see what that looks like. You might have unlocked a new thing for me, so thanks for that. Yeah, so there's that guy, and probably pull the saturation down just a touch. And then we do the sky. Now, sky is interesting because sometimes you can get away with, if you want to get more detail of the sky, you just take your lift and you just tank that shit. Boom. You get immediate saturation and mid-tone contrast, detail in the clouds. All right, well, I hadn't tracked that part yet, obviously. So that's what the split correction looks like. We've corrected for ground independently from the sky. We don't have a whole lot of blooming, which is good. Means we got a good track. That is awesome, Bart. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for the submission, dude. I don't know that we'll get to your footage tonight, but we can definitely use it as an example for next week as well. So now I've done my secondary corrections, right? I've gotten some more detail of the sky without getting crazy. I've been able to get a lot more detail out of the ground without getting crazy. Now in this case, I definitely would do something because I've increased that contrast, which increases saturation. And because of the static white balance, blue has responded differently than green. So that blue is now really intense, whereas the green is not as intense. So that was like, that's one of those things I was talking about. The native white balance will help prevent that. It's a little bit more of a pain in the ass than the initial side of things, but you get an even response when you start really fucking with the colors. But this to me is a good start for creative grade. You know, I don't think anything particularly is missing from it. Yeah, I really got to try that. Turn the noise reduction off because the shadows look fantastic. And that's, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to have to try that, dude. Well, like we automatically pulled the iron oxide color out of the shale there. And so that pops. And then we got even the rainbow, and that's where the track ends. And we got a little bit of darkening where the mask isn't quite perfect. I mean, if I really wanted to get stupid with it, come over here, flip that over to better, retrack it. I turn that on, goes a little faster. Yeah, Marcel, I haven't gotten to your clip yet. We're going to be looking at that next. I just wanted to go through a quick primary and I wanted to go through the quick secondaries for Falcon, and so we went over primaries, and then I'm going to take a look at yours next. Then I'm going to take a look at one of mine to show you what it like a pain in the dick primary corrections look like. But welcome, I'm glad you can make it. That's probably good enough. Back that up. Turn the onion skin off. Yeah, that's pretty good. We get the idea, right? Use a layer node and a tracking node to separate my ground and sky, and did secondary corrections on each of those, while my primary corrections that affect the entire image are up here. And then beyond this is where my creative stuff happens. So like all of this right here is my color correction, and then we'll start our color grade after that. And that's a little bit beyond of what we're doing today. So, and I have lost all of my nodes because, okay, there we go. Hey, look at that. It's so cramped. I don't know how you guys work like this. You guys probably don't work like this. It's just I'm doing it this way so you guys can see it because we're on YouTube. That's correct. The magic mask, the AI tracked mask, is in studio only because it's one of those. Well, it's one of the neural effects. I don't think you get any of the neural effects with the free version. Correct me if I'm wrong. What I really should do is take another machine and install a free version and find out what I can and can't do, and that would actually help me teach you guys better, I think. Because I'm not shilling for black magic here. I'm not trying to get you to buy their stuff, but I'm also trying to get you to buy their stuff because it's the industry standard, and this is why we're all here, is to do color. I don't think I could accomplish this with Premiere. Maybe if I practiced for months and months, but it's just not natural and intuitive to me. So now just one more thing here. Now that I got this split apart, and go to my ground, and I can take my blues down and pull that little bit of purple there. The mask, I need to push the mask a little further. That mask a little funky right there, but I pulled the UV down a little bit, which does make a bit of difference. And what I used to do that was one of the Resolve 18's new features. I think it's 18, maybe it's 17's new feature. Ground, the color warper, pretty fun stuff. Instead of selecting a specific color, you select your color off of here. Now you can also, it's just a fun thing. If I come over here and I just grab the color here, and it'll just move around from there. So I can grab any color, green. I could make my green more saturated. I can make it red. You can make it blue. You just grab a color and move it. It's a little confusing at first, but it gets pretty intuitive pretty quick. We're just going to pull saturation down on the mid-tone blue, and then we're going to push it a little bit purple. And that'll help bring out the reds that are in. Because if we look over here, we're going to pull the green and the orange out by reducing those. And then that takes care of that ultraviolet hue a bit. And it didn't hurt our sky. Right, so that's the key point of the secondaries. We don't want to fuck with the sky because we're fixing something on the ground. We don't want to fuck with the ground because we're fixing something in the sky. So we want to split those things. And if I have something like an ocean or a lake or something like that, I also split the lake from the ground and the sky, because you can actually do some really creative things with water. You can pull a boatload of refractive detail out of water that normally you don't see, but your camera does. So your mileage may vary. It depends on how patient you are with certain things. Yeah, this is essentially what I would do for my primary and secondary corrections. We got the primary white balance, exposure, and saturation. Then we broke out into a track matte and broke out the sky and the ground for secondaries. And beyond that, then we're starting to go into more of a creative look where I'll tone the shadows, tone the highlights, add some detail, add some sharpness, things like that. Any questions so far, especially from Falcon, since it's your footage? I'm sure it'll be fine, Bart. Is it daytime footage or is it nighttime footage? Always fun. Always fun. All right, so now we're gonna go to like the edit page. I'm just gonna delete all that. And we're gonna take Marcel's clip. Now he shot in 60 frames per second, so we're gonna let it change the frame rate on me since I got rid of that. Thank you very much, appreciate that. We got rid of the timeline, then we're not locked into a specific frame rate anymore. So here is Falcon Rad's clip. This is off-axis clip, my bad. So this is what I was talking about before. So you can see the white balance shifting and the exposure shifting. You see there's a blue hue all of a sudden as we top this corner here. Right there, these are in shadow, so these get shifted blue because now we're pulling our white balance from this, the auto white balance, I think. Now I say I think because GoPros have this really bad habit of shifting colors when they shift exposure. So if I look at this and I think your shit's on auto white balance, don't be offended. GoPros are notorious for dicking with colors when they shift exposures, and I could be misreading that. Oh my goodness. Early evening. What a treat. I thought you were going to send me some middle of the night parking lot rip, which I'm fine with. I'll work with it, but so Marcel, if you're in the chat still, if you're not too high, can you tell me what your settings were on this clip outside of 16 by 9 wide with stabilization off? I think it was, yeah. I use the same 50 millisecond smoothing window that I used for Falcons. So let me know what your settings were. If you added like a static white balance, or so it does look a little cool. I mean, it's not bad at all. Like if I were doing this in an HDR grade, it would probably pass muster. It was a while back. All right, no worries, man. So we'll go right into the color page. Feel like you have an ND filter on here. Hashtag no stab. Yeah. Yeah, you got a chuckle out of my comment the other night. It was Matty Blunt's posted something, or you were playing one of his videos, and he put no stab in the title, and you know that's my pet peeve. I'm like, I don't care if you're not going to use stabilization, but it's not a bragging right. So it's like hashtag no stab, hashtag no lens distortion correction, hashtag no grade. I don't know if he saw it or not, but he doesn't know me well enough to understand my brand of humor. I just think that's funny. So what I was talking about, I think before you got in here, Marcel, was that contrary to Falcon's footage, you have a lot of exposure changes because you're a lot closer to things as you're going up. And the sun is off to your left front. So you have a lot of items, a lot of areas that are in shadow here, which is it's gonna shift your exposure and potentially your white balance. And then as you crest these things, your white balance and exposure will shift again. So this would be a little bit more difficult to deal with. And one of the things that I had suggested, just in general, and I'm not sure if you were on the stream yet or not. Oh, he was? Oh man, if you get a chance, tell him I'm sorry. I did not mean to offend him. It's all in jest. In fact, I have his email address. I'll send him an email. Yeah, I don't know if you're on the stream yet or not earlier. But but I was suggesting to change the default, and if you can tolerate using labs firmware. What is that? Is that new? Unmix? That's different. Uh, if you can use a labs firmware, you can change the rate at which the auto exposure shifts, and that can actually help with giving your shot kind of a consistent look. A little bit more than locking your ISO and physically locking your exposure. You might have the white balance locked. Like I said, shifting exposure definitely changes colors on GoPros. It's really bad on the Hero 10. It's slightly better on the 11 and slightly better on the 12. The Hero 10 is notorious for switching, like, it's just But as I was telling Falcon, because he's using labs firmware, you want to try to use the native white balance, because anytime you shift the white balance artificially by like assigning a Kelvin number to it, you're taking your response curve of the sensor and you're tilting it one way or the other, right? And so if you cool your image off, like 5500, 6000. Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm not sure if they fixed it or not. On the Hero 10, there was a bug where that setting only stays for the first time you record after you set it. On the, I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if they fixed it on the 11. On the 12, it seems to stick. I've always set it as a permanent thing, but it on the 10 and the 11, if I recall, it only works the first time after you set it with the QR code. So, but on the 12, it seems to stick. I'm not sure what the deal is there, but yeah, you can change the way it shifts. If you manually set your white balance, you're shifting that response curve of the sensor. So if you cool off your scene a little bit, which means you're going to inherently prefer the blues in your scene, then you're shortening the amount of range you have between peaked out and where your middle ground is for blue. Your red presumably gets more range, right? But what ends up happening is that, as we saw in Falcon's video, the ultraviolet blue shift responded way more to saturation increase than the greens and the trees did. And you have less headroom. You have less available information to make corrections. So the native white balance gives you a flat response curve for all the colors the sensor can see. Couple that with wide color gamut, which then takes the sensor out of the color space, out of the Rec 79 color space, and just writes whatever colors it sees to the file. You get a lot more consistent information, and all of your colors will respond the same to your tools. So yeah, native white balance, if you can tolerate it. It is kind of a pain in the dick, and I'll show you why when we get to my clip. Let's take a quick gander here. You don't have any. Oh, I'm already in the color page. So we'll look at the white balance real quick. The problem is we don't have. I gotta maybe scroll quite a ways through here. Snow is never a good thing to use for white balance because it usually contains some kind of dust, which makes it brown. Doesn't look like there's any clouds in the sky. No cloud. Well, the sun's in front of us, so all the clouds are worthless anyway. Because remember, you want the sun, you want to be catching the side of the cloud that's being illuminated by the cloud, or you want to catch the side of the cloud that's being illuminated by the sun. You don't want the cloud to be illuminated through the sun, because then you're going to get refraction and color shifts. So, I mean, this is probably as good as we're going to get. At this altitude, we're not going to get a whole lot of dust. We have, we'll probably try to take it from as low as possible in the frame to minimize the refraction reflection of the blue color up there. But let's just take a gander here. What does this look like? Wow, it actually cooled it off. So if we come back down here, and one thing I do to test is crank the saturation all the way up. If it looks weird, it's probably off. So we will reset the white balance. That looks better. So it was probably better at a camera than what I could find to pull a white balance off of. So we'll just leave that alone. We'll pretend like I did something cool. And we'll work on exposure and contrast. Again, your exposure is shifting around all over the place. So one of the things we can do inherently, we can hide that exposure change a little bit in the 3 slider correction. So if I just kick this off right up front here, then what's going to end up happening is your shadows aren't going to get as crushed. Ooh, but you can really see the color shift. Now it makes your exposure seem a little bit more consistent. Why is this playing at 29.97? It doesn't matter. Oh yeah. So I'm not sure if it's auto white balance or if it's caused by the exposure shift. That little pool of water right there is so awesome. You see how much more detail we're getting through the water just from doing that 3 slider correction. So we just increased basically what's called a local contrast. This way, like when you come across something bright, your shadows in the trees don't get crushed quite as much because we've boosted them, and they will end up falling in a different part of that contrast curve. So again, I mean, most of the stuff was... So there's that noise, right? This is what I would be afraid of, Falcon. If you look at the noise in the shadow here, I'm not sure if you can see it on the stream, but turning the noise reduction might make that worse, but it also might increase the detail in the shadows and it might actually make the noise easier to take out in post. I'm gonna have to try it. I've been too timid to turn the noise reduction off in camera, but I think you've kind of convinced me to at least give it a shot and see what it looks like. Because if I could preserve more detail in the shadows, that'd be awesome. So we'll look at our scopes here. We've got the snow is definitely punching everything out. I mean, there is... Oh, that's right, it's 8-bit. My bad. We probably only want like 1.2. You can definitely see the exposure dancing around down here, and you can see the exposure shifts happen. The whole thing kind of slides up and down a little bit. Not terrible. I mean, come on. This scenery right here, I mean, you could have captured this as a potato and it'd still look good. So yeah, Falcon, I'm not sure. For me, at least on the Hero 12, ISO 400 is where things really start falling apart. That being said, I prefer to have a complete complete range of dynamic range, so I don't want any clipping one way or the other. So like on the 10 and 11, I would use an ND32 for the middle of the day, and keep the ISO in auto and lock the shutter at 180 degrees. Shutter auto white balance 55K as a minimum. Okay. So the funny thing about auto shutter and auto ISO on the GoPro is, especially when the shutter is set to auto, usually if you've ever done still photography, you prioritize one of those things. Hey Koala, what's up, dude? Thanks for coming in here. Absolutely, Falcon. You got to have something moving, right? So, if you've done still photography, you know that a lot of times you're going to do like aperture priority, right? So you're going to set your lens to f2.8, and then you want the ISO to go where it needs to be, and you want the shutter speed to go, or you're going to set, you typically set your aperture, and you'll probably set your ISO. I don't think anybody uses auto ISO on a still photography camera. You want your ISO to be as low as possible for the shot, and then the camera will calculate the appropriate shutter speed for the exposure. And then vice versa, right? You can have shutter priority where it will use the aperture to control exposure. Or if you're an absolute savage, you turn ISO to auto and, you know, hope to Jeebus that your pictures come out okay. The Taiwan mountains. No shit. That's bananas, dude. Well, I'm glad you can make the stream. Really appreciate it. Up in the Taiwan mountains. It's crazy. You gotta make sure you get some good footage, dude. With the GoPro, it's a little weird because there's an aspect of exposure that you don't actually ever see, and that's the gyro. Because first and foremost, a GoPro is an action camera, and so it's designed to capture action as crisply as possible. So if you leave everything, if you just take it out of the box and you start recording, it's going to be ISO priority until you start moving the camera around. Then it becomes shutter priority because it doesn't want motion blur for action, right? So it shifts priority based on how the camera is actually being moved. And this can also cause problems if you have a vibration or something in your drone that's causing that gyro to be like, hey, we're moving really fast, right? You're going to have shutter priority, which means a really fast shutter, which means your ISO is going to rise to accommodate, and you're always going to have noisy footage, and you're not going to know why. So probably the best thing to do for a GoPro is locking the shutter. Everything else can be full auto. You can have ISO 100 to 1600, auto white balance, but if you can lock that shutter to something where it's fast enough to expose your brightest highlights properly and slow enough to expose your deepest shadows enough, right, that's where the ND filter comes in. That's why I use an ND64 on the Hero 12, because I want to be able to expose the brightest highlight without running into the bottom of ISO 100, if that makes any sense. Like if ISO 100 is not dark enough to be able to expose my brightest highlight, in most cases for me it's the sunshine, and I'll take that at the, you know, with the compromise that for my shadows are going to be ISO 400 under normal circumstances. Oh, that's fantastic, dude. That is so cool. I can't wait for that one. So, yeah. Definitely lock the shutter if you can help it. Even if you're going to lock it at something fast, you just don't want it shifting around. So we did a little bit of contrast here. We can do a little bit of saturation. We'll probably want to boost the saturation in this case. I know that the Hero 10's a little bit undersaturated, but what I might do instead of just cranking on saturation is we're going to pull that one out. We're going to take okay, I need a corrector, and then I need to change this base. HSV, I think. And then I'm so confused right now. Channel, we only want channel 2. And we crank the saturation there. So basically what I did is I just took saturation and, whoops, didn't want to do that. Just pulled the saturation channel out of HSV on this node. It's a little bit complex, but basically it makes it so I don't clip any of my midtones, and I can pull a lot more saturation out without damaging it. It's a little bit more subtle than just reefing on the saturation slider. So that doesn't look too bad. This is Marcel's footage. So yeah, I think probably because you're so close to the surface, I might not do a split. I might not do a split secondary correction on this. I would probably, if I did, it'd be color selection. I don't know how well that works, so try to do like a 3D fire here. It's pretty good. Not getting too much of the ground. And we can just pull that down. Oh wait, I'm in the wrong color space. My bad. My bad, yo. Didn't want to do that there. So I'll label this one saturation. Getting lazy here, kids. Gotta make sure I label these things so you know what the hell's going on. And moving on to secondary, so we'll just do a small sky adjustment. In which case I will use a 3D qualifier, which, as opposed to looking at the hue, saturation, and luminance of a color, I'm selecting that exact color value. And so I want to use the plus dropper so that I can select all of the different colors. So you can see where the 8-bit breaks down. You can see those gradations. That's the difference between like the very small variations of color that are present in the sky there. Select all of them there as best as we can. And we're going to get some of the ground, but it's not that big a deal. And then we're just going to pull the lift out of it, give it a little bit more saturation. Hey, look, we got some clouds. Ah, 8-bit's rearing its ugly head. So remember how I was saying we got some of the ground? If you look what happened here, it looks pretty gnarly. So we can't do it that way. It's all falling apart. Never mind. We'll take it as is. Oh wait, it's still fucky. Why is it fucky? I don't know. Probably use HSV. Never set the color space back. Who knows? I just work here. That's better. Yeah, Koala, definitely looking forward to seeing it. Watching that live flight. That's gonna be awesome. Okay, so not too many secondary corrections that I would do to this footage simply because the sky is just a sliver of the frame. And we have a lot of different things happening in the foreground that we don't necessarily want to adversely affect one thing to correct for another. So I would probably take this as it is and then move on to creative grade, the actual creative look. So Spifferoony. Now I want to show you what a pain in the dick primary correction looks like. Manually set this because for whatever reason it didn't change before. Let's yeah, there we go. Audio in it. Okay, so in this case, you can see that I used a color correction, color calibration chart, and these are like $15 for 2 on Amazon. They don't have to be. I mean, you can spend $2,000 on one of these things if you really wanted to. I recommend not investing too much. These are action cameras. These aren't Area Alexas, so don't sweat it. When I pull my white balance, so let's go ahead and label this properly. White balance. And then I'll go ahead and just make the other ones exposure. Contrast. Saturazione. So this is Hero 12. Oh god. This is a super nice thing to have. Some caveats. You want to make sure that it's lit by your primary light. So in this case, it's the sun. If I turned it so that it was facing down and like in shadow, then the white balance would end up being off. So you want it to be exposed and lit by the sun, but because of the card material, you also don't want you want to make sure you're not catching a glare off the card, because that will shift it as well. And in this case, we're in SDR, so I can use either the white square or the gray square. In this case, the white square is probably going to be best. If we were doing HDR, I would recommend the gray square. You always want to try to pull white balance off of a 100 nit gray or 18% gray. Depends on who you ask. But white here will work just fine. And voila, there's my white balance. So that's easy, right? Trying to do it manually, I'd have to like pick something off this guy's house, or, you know, it's my neighborhood, so I like know where all the white things are in case I forget to use the card. Even still, there are still some challenging lighting conditions. Sunset, sunrise are a couple of them, because there's a lot of shifting color, especially between flights. You know, oh god. It's overcast and kind of like middle afternoon here, so I can probably get 2 or 3 flights in before I need to pull this again, because the light will change. But if you're like at sunset, it's going to be changing. It's going to be changing its warmth every minute. You just can't really see it. So you'd probably want to bust this out every time you plug in before you take off. And then we wait for that to get out of the way. So this is GP log, if I recall. I think so. Oh shit. Oh, it's happening, guys. I'm tired. So in this case, we're gonna want to kind of we can see here that most everything is up top. We want to bring it down a little bit, so I'm just using my offset to bring the exposure down. And visually, I want to go until just above where my shadows might start getting crushed. I'm gonna add a little bit of contrast. Bring the highlights back up towards the top of the scope there. Maybe roll the pivot down. My midtones a little bit further down. So that's kind of where I'd put it. Just out of the box. Saturation, we probably pop this a little bit, because in log saturation gets pretty crushed. Now, knowing that I'm going to do secondary corrections on here, I don't want to pull this to where I finally feel like it's going to want to be, right? I want to pull it enough that it's going to give me a good base onto which to work my creative look. So that's the primaries for this clip, for my Hero 12 clip. I'm not going to get into the secondaries on this one, because it's another trees with the magic mask, and you're just going to listen to me complain for an hour. We can do it, but I think I'll spare you guys. So that's what the primary corrections would look like. And I will admittedly tell you, when it's just me and Resolve and nobody's watching, I shortcut this shit hard. I go right into secondaries and do my primaries separately on ground and sky, as opposed to doing my primaries, then splitting, and then doing secondaries, then layering, and then doing my creative look. I shortcut the shit out of it. And so I will say, as I say this a lot, you know, color grading is as much a science as is an art, and there are different paths to get to the same thing, right? So in my opinion, there's no wrong way of doing something. There's different ways of doing something. There's the wrong way to get to a great look, and there's the right way to get to a shitty look. We want to figure out what way works best for you to get to the look that you want. None of that is up to me. I'm just teaching you the science, and I'm giving you what the industry standard is, and then now I'm kind of giving you the caveat. Just take all that shit, like take it in, understand it, ingest it, acknowledge it, and throw it the fuck away. You don't have to spend 3 nodes on this. You can do this in 1 node. You can not do this at all and just do it as a part of your secondaries, like I do, because I'm lazy. I don't want to waste 3 nodes. Do you know how much nodes cost? Nodes are expensive. Okay, I'm stepping off my soapbox right now. Yes. That's primary corrections in a nutshell, kids. Any questions, comments, concerns, queries, quips? Let me know in the chat. I awkwardly try to eat up that lag time between the delay and somebody actually typing something and or not typing something. I mean, that's fine too. It's all good. Whew. Throat gets sore from talking really fast. Or my throat gets sore really fast from talking. I don't talk that fast. I do talk kind of fast, but so yeah, just to kind of reiterate the core terminology, primary color corrections are corrections that you do over your entire image. You're not necessarily going to be selecting a particular color range, luminance range, or separating out the structures of your image. It's things you're going to do to your entire image to make it look. The goal is to make it look as natural as possible, right? As close to real life as possible. There is a lot to process. I mean, it is 3 nodes, and it doesn't even have to be that, but you know, having 3 separate nodes enables you, 1, to stay organized, and 2, to be very conscious and attentive about what it is that you're looking to accomplish, right? So the downside of having multiple nodes is I do it all the time. I'll put the correction on the wrong node, and like sometimes when I'm doing tracking, I'll accidentally do, you know, a correction on the track node, which then screws it all up and I gotta fix it again. Or I'll try to adjust something with a track on a node that doesn't have a track on it, because sometimes that can be a little bit dingy in the brain case. So yeah, there's a lot here. I expect you know, you guys are going to go off and kind of let it soak in, play with your own footage, and yeah, you know, it's fun stuff. We're getting into the nitty gritty. Next week, we're going to get really knee deep into secondary corrections. And the further we get into this, the more fun it's going to get, the more interesting I think it's going to get, right? We've been talking about the theory and the software and the hardware and blah, blah, blah. All the prerequisite stuff to get into color grading, like seriously into color grading. Now we're starting to get into the actual how to do it. And this I think is the last kind of meh part, right? Just getting that base correction done on your footage so that it looks as natural as possible. So then you have a good foundation onto which you can build your look, right? This is not a look for me. This is, I mean, would I post this to YouTube? Sure. It's fine, right? It's fine. And for most people, fine is enough. And that's cool. I mean, if somebody posted this on YouTube, I really wouldn't complain about it. Right? This is just basic corrections. Marcel, Falcon, if you guys just uploaded the footage with your basic corrections that I did to YouTube, I would have nothing to say about it. It's fine if you don't do over-the-top creative look. It's okay. You don't have to do that for every video. You don't have to do it for any videos, right? What you don't want to upload is overexposed blue or orange video that's, you know, hasn't had anything done to it, has had no treatments. It's not right. The whole point of making something that's cinematic, it's the intent that's behind it. It's what you're trying, it's a story that you're trying to convey, that you're trying to tell with color. that makes it cinematic. It's not necessarily lens blur. It's not necessarily, you know, having a high-end camera. You can do something cinematic with your cell phone. It's all about the intent. And what we're doing with Cult of Color is we're bringing that intent and the technical knowledge, we're bridging that gap so that you can get the technical knowledge out of the way and you can just focus on being creative, just being your creative self. So that's primarily what I'm trying to convey through all of this, is just how to get all the technical bullshit out of the way and just create something that you're happy with, that you're proud of. You know, I think you guys, a lot of you guys see my little rant on things that are called cinematic. I think it's definitely a term that's been overused, especially in the FPV community. It seems like any video that isn't S-Bang, freestyle, racing, or long range is just lumped into cinematic. Or flying slow is cinematic. Or whatever, right? And there are definitely people out there who are absolute masters of cinematic FPV. I don't think I would count myself among those people. Not yet. Sure, I have the color grading part down, but actually planning and flying the part to make sure that I'm telling the story that I want to tell is still something that I'm kind of developing. Parker Shepard is the first one that comes to mind. That guy is absolutely amazing at everything he does. And hey, Bob. Cool, man. Thanks for stopping in. Appreciate it. Yeah, everything Parker Shepard does is amazing. And I both hate that guy and I want to be that guy. Mostly because it appears like it's his full-time job just to go to amazing places and fly all the time. Really fucking annoying. But I have a lot of respect for what he does. He puts a lot into his videos. There's a number of other people out there. Sam M is another one who does a really good job. Like telling a story. Paul Nurkala actually really good at telling a story as well. And, you know, so I think those guys get it, and they already had the flying ability down, and it was just more about learning the technology and the technical side of things to try to, you know, combine all that to tell a story. I'm kind of coming at it from the other side. I'm still honestly working on the flying ability, on how to make my flying transparent so I'm telling a story and not showing off a flight video. Anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. Got any questions in the comments? Let me know. Let's see here. There was one other thing. Did Songbird ever jump in here? If not, I will clip this and make sure he sees my little review of his grade. It was pretty good. Yeah, if you get any questions, I mean, I'm available. You don't have to wait till the stream to ask me questions. You can ask me randomest questions on Discord. I know a couple of you guys have submitted some grades for review, which I've been happy to have a look at, and we've been kind of working together on helping you develop your look and getting the technology out of the way, right? Hey Bart, I really appreciate that, dude. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just, you know, I want you guys to be the best you can be. You have an interest in this, that's why you're here. And it would be disingenuous for me to be a part of the FPV community and sit here and bitch about hashtag no stab, hashtag no grade, right? The jokes I make. If I wasn't going to be a part of the solution, or what I thought was going to be a part of the solution. I have a lot of experience to share, and so I want to share that with you guys freely, and you can take from it what you need, you know, what you need to accomplish your goals from a video standpoint. Integrate what it is that you need in the ways that you need it into how you do what it is that you do. I'm not going to tell you what's right and what's wrong. That being said, I have a thing, super secret scroll thing that's going to be coming up. I don't know when yet. but we are going to do, I guess, for lack of a better term, a contest. I will not be participating in that contest, but we're going to be looking at doing some competitive color grading. Let's put it that way. Once we're done with the color grading 101, it is when we're going to get into the to the more awards focused type of thing, and might even I don't know, might even get some sponsors, might even give away some copies of Resolve. So stay tuned for that. I would definitely like to make it known that you guys are putting in the work to get to where you need to be, and I think you guys should be as enabled as possible. And if I can do anything to make that happen, then I'm gonna. So with that, it doesn't look like there's going to be any more questions in the chat. Competition brings out the best in you. Well, don't start off at each other, like breaking each other's knees or anything. That would not go well. Yeah, so it's difficult to judge color grading objectively because everybody has their own taste. I think we've seen that in the Discord already. You know, we had somebody who posted a grade that was just saturation all the way up. And I understand why they went that way. To them, it's aesthetically pleasing. It's not particularly technically sound. I think there's a different way to get to the look that they want that's not going to hurt their footage. And we can explore that later on. But it's cool that you guys are posting your work and let me have a look at it. And folks like Falcon trying new things with the noise reduction. Now I have to try it. I have to try turning the noise reduction off and see what happens. Like I said, I was too timid to do it before. I'm going to try it now. So we'll see how that turns out. I am just as capable of learning from you guys as you are from me. So it's not just a one-way street here, and I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone. I mean, we've had, I don't know how many people we've had in here for such a long time. So not off just 90%. Oh, okay. Well, still, I think I'm going to mess with it. I'm just going to mess with it. So, yeah, I don't think I've got anything else for you guys. Next week, we'll have a look at Bartman Dude's footage for the secondary corrections. We'll get a little bit knee deeper into the secondary corrections and all that fun stuff. So, with that, hope you guys have a good week. Hope you guys get a chance to get out and fly. Hope you got some good weather. And feel free to bounce questions off me in the Discord. You can either PM me, you can hit me up in the Discord if you want other people to participate in the discussion as well. That's fine. I know not everybody's necessarily interested in getting everybody's opinion at once on something, so feel free to PM me if you need to. And submit footage for next week if you like. Otherwise, I can go over some of the footage that I've already gotten from Marcel and Falcon and Bart. And yeah, so hey, not a problem, dude. Happy to help. And yeah, I really suck at this whole ending thing. So I mean, be sure to smash the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. There's a Patreon link down in the doobly-doo if you want to throw a coin at your local colorist. Not mandatory. There's no content behind it, so don't feel like you're missing anything. And make sure you're in the Discord if you're not. So with that, see you guys next week. Keep the shiny side up. Keep your tits dry. Okay. Bye.